When you step into a time machine, you are in a recruiting office during World War II. What is the best job to sign up for? Most people who wanted to stay alive would have chosen anything but infantry. But there were some jobs that were even more risky. Here are some examples. Ball turret gunners. Ball turret gunners flying over enemy targets had one of the war's most dangerous jobs. In addition to the standard fears of being shot down, these gunners had to deal with the fact that they were dangling beneath the aircraft without any armor and were a favored target of enemy fighters. Worse, their parachute didn't fit in the ball, and so they would have to climb into the plane and don the chute if the crew was forced to bail out. They were also more exposed to the elements than other aircrew members. Turret gunners' oxygen lines could freeze from the extremely low temperatures. Everyone else in the airplane. Of course, everyone in the air over enemy land had a bad time. These days, flying planes is seen as a safe and easy job, but during World War II, it was one of the most dangerous jobs. Bomber groups were destroyed by deadly accurate flak, while fighters took apart planes on their own. And when things went wrong, teams didn't have many choices. Because first aid wasn't very good, badly hurt crew members were sometimes thrown from the plane with their parachute attached, in the hopes that Nazi troops would fix them up and send them to a prison camp. It was so dangerous for any plane to fly over enemy land that paratroopers would count down the seconds until they could jump out and be safer. Merchant mariners. A lot of people don't even think of the military branch that lost the most soldiers in World War II as a military branch. The Merchant Marines' job was to send all the necessary supplies from the United States to Britain, Russia, and the Pacific. In the United States, newspapers often said that 2 merchant marine ships had been lost the previous week, but on average, 33 ships were lost each week. Every 26 Marines who served in the war died, for a loss rate of 3.85%. Another service that came in close is the Marine Corps, which lost 3.66% of its force to war and other causes. We think that if the Air Force had been a different branch during World War II, it would have been the only one to lose as many people as the mail delivery guys. Submariners. How could the job be any more dangerous than you already think? Submariners had to go down into the water in steel tubes that were too full. To begin, submarines often did something called a circle run. It takes place when a torpedo drifts to one side and hits the submarine that shot it after going around in a circle. There was still a chance that the gas fumes wouldn't get out, or the batteries would catch fire if that didn't happen. In either case, the crew would die of suffocation. That doesn't even include the many technical or crew problems that could sink the ship at any time. The crew of the USS Squalus learned this the hard way. Field telephone layers and radio teams. As a result of the fact that the majority of soldiers are aware that they should aim for the antennas on the battlefield, a common POG job was one of the most dangerous things to do on the front lines during World War II. Snipers started focusing their attention on the antennas because they belonged to forward observers and commanders. Cable was also placed so that leaders could converse without worrying that the enemy might listen in on their conversations. A number of snipers would routinely fire their weapons at the cable dogs who were entrusted with running the telephone cables in an effort to disrupt enemy communications. In a similar manner, aircraft and artillery forces each targeted radio carriers as well as cable dogs throughout the conflict. Blacksmith. During World War II, blacksmiths continued to produce a significant number of the components that were required to repair machinery and equipment. Using coal or coke forges, they would manually fashion various tools and components made of metal. A number of the tens of thousands of horses and mules that were put to use during the war were also outfitted with footwear that they manufactured. Meat cutter. Cutting meat is exactly what it says it does on the label. It was the responsibility of these soldiers to prepare full carcasses, which included types of meat like beef and lamb, for distribution to different units located all over the world. Horsebreaker. Horsebreakers were responsible for the training of horses and mules in order to prepare them for use by mounted units. In addition to that, they taught them how to carry packs and how to attach themselves to wagons and carts. Despite the fact that horses and mules were not utilized to the same level as they were during the First World War, soldiers continued to rely on them in order to traverse terrain that was inaccessible to mechanized units during World War II. One example is the 53 32nd Brigade, which was a long-range patrol force that was established for deployment in the mountains of Burma. This brigade was able to function mostly independently due to the fact that it was allotted 3,000 mules, all of which were imported from the United States. Artist and animation artist. There are employment available for professional multimedia illustrators in the military today. But during World War II, military painters and animation artists made paintings, illustrations, films, charts, and maps by hand. Bill Maudlin, who created Willie and Joe, archetypes for infantrymen on the front line, and Bill Keane, who went on to draw Family Circus after his military service finished, were two highly successful artists who served during World War II. Both of these artists went on to have great careers as artists. When World War II was going on, the animation artists working for the military were extremely busy. In order to produce patriotic films for the general public as well as instructional or training films for military personnel, the Army even stationed soldiers at Walt Disney Studios for the duration of the war. Crystal grinder. A great number of radios, mostly Galena, continued to require crystals in order to function during World War II. These crystals would be ground and calibrated by crystal grinders so that they could selectively pick up certain frequencies. On the front lines, personal radios were not permitted. However, crystal radio sets did not depend on external power sources, which meant that they were not susceptible to detection by the adversary. As a result of this, soldiers frequently constructed their own crystal radios out of a wide variety of objects, including as pencils and razor blades, in order to listen to music and news. These radio sets that were illegally obtained were referred to as foxhole radios. Cooper. During the war, the wooden buckets, barrels, casks, and kegs that were used to pack, store, and transport supplies and equipment were constructed and repaired by the troops that served as coopers. For the purpose of repairing broken barrels and plugging holes with wood, they utilized hand tools. Wood was used to package a wide variety of items for transportation all the way until World War II. However, advancements in the technology of packaging made of metal and cardboard marked the beginning of the end for hardwood barrels and crates. Model maker. Military model makers were told to make scale models of military gear, scenery, and other things that could be used in movies, for training, and to plan operations. They used the models they made in Operation Fortitude, which was one of the best cases of lying during the war. The goal of Operation Fortitude was to trick the Germans into thinking that the Allied troops that were going to France for D-Day would land in Pas-de-Calais in July instead of Normandy in June. Model builders made fake houses, planes, and landing craft, which were then put in a camp near Dover, England, that was made for the made-up 1st US Army Group. Hitler was so fooled that he kept troops on standby for 2 weeks after D-Day because he thought another attack would come through the Dover Strait. Pigeoneer. It was the responsibility of the pigeoneers to oversee every element of their bird's existence. Pigeons that were employed to transport messages were bred, trained, and cared for when they were produced by them. One group of birds would be taught to fly at night, while others would learn that food could be found in one place and water in another. Some birds would be educated expressly for night flying. It has been reported by the United States Army Communications Electronics Museum that more than 90% of the messages that were carried by pigeons were successfully delivered. Field Artillery Sound Recorder. The beats on these men were the worst. Before radar was invented, sound ranging was one of the best ways to find enemy rockets, mortars, and weapons. The method was first created during World War I and was still used in battle during the Korean War. A field artillery sound recorder would watch an oscillograph and a recording that was hooked up to several microphones from a forward operating post. When the sound of an enemy gun hit a microphone, it would record the information on sound film. The information from several microphones could then be put together to find the enemy gun. Sound ranging is still used by many countries today, and it is often used together with radar. Airplane woodworker. Long before World War II, tubular steel had mostly replaced wood in the building of airplanes. However, airplane woodworkers were still needed to fix and maintain existing planes, especially gliders and some training planes. During World War II, the Waco CG-4A was the most common American troop cargo combat glider. It was made of wood and was very important to the war. The CG-4A was first used in July 1943, when it was sent to destroy Sicily. They mostly sent troops in to fight from the air, most notably for the D-Day invasion of France on June 6, 1944, and Operation Market Garden in September 1944. They were also used in the theatre of China, Burma, and India. We hope you liked this video. Watch another video here.